Well, I'm so grateful that you're here today. Every year we ask Destiny Rescue to come and just to share whatever's on their hearts about the ministry that's taking place. I'm going to be careful. I don't want you to think that I'm just building Chris up, but I do want you to know that over the time that I've got to know him, especially starting last year, I was so very grateful as he would share about Destiny Rescue. And the heart, you just could feel it coming out of his heart, the passion that he has for this specific ministry. And you kind of watch people, grow into their new responsibilities. And this week we sat down again, and the one thing that I noticed over and over again is that same passion and that same heart is still what lives inside of him. And it ought to be. Because when we think about a ministry like Destiny Rescue, we're reminded of something that is very, very real. Many of our kids just left just a moment ago to go to junior church. Every time Chris comes to share, or we've had others in the past that have come to share about Destiny Rescue, it is so hard for me to grasp, to be quite honest with you. Because I think about those who are walking out of our doors now to go to a classroom where they are going to be loved on and cared for and shown Jesus to. And I'm reminded of the work that Destiny Rescue does to bring girls just like that very same age, to bring them out of sex trafficking. Two very, very different kinds of scenarios altogether. But that's the age of these girls that are being removed from their homes. And there ought to be a passion. I think there's a reason why Chris has such a passion for what's taking place. It ought to stir all of our hearts. And I am so grateful that the good news of Jesus is what does just that. It stirs the heart of God's people. And if something like Destiny Rescue does not do that to your heart, then I'd suggest that you go to a spiritual doctor and have them evaluate you, because nothing else will. It's the reason why you sense the passion about this specific ministry. It's the reason why there's a passion about sharing Jesus Christ. Before Chris comes, I just want to read something to you that my senior pastor gave to me a long, long time ago. And it's probably the reason why I use it when I preach on Sunday or over on Wednesday night. This is my excuse. Is that my pastor told me a long, long time ago, he said, you ought to have such a passion for preaching the good news of Jesus Christ that you preach like it was your last message. I didn't know where he got that from, but I want to read to you where I think he got it from. It comes from a man by the name of Richard Baxter, and he was a Puritan preacher back in the 1600s. And these are the words that he spoke. He said, I preached as never sure to preach again, and as a dying man to dying men. And I thought to myself, that's how we ought to live out our lives every day. It's the reason why Chris has devoted himself to such a ministry like Destiny Rescue. Because there are girls who every day are dying. They are dying spiritually and emotionally, and eventually some will die physically without knowing Jesus. Lives who have been taken advantage of because of cruelty, because of a world that has fallen so deep into sin. It ought to cause us to awake and preach as if it's our last message. Today, you're going to hear Chris share, and as he does, our hope today is that through our love offering at the end of our service, through our luncheon afterwards, 100% of that is going to go to Destiny Rescue. And quite honestly, if we could walk out of here today and we could save 2 girls, man, wouldn't that be great to know that you and I have done something today that truly mattered for the kingdom of God? And I pray that your hearts are moved in that way, that you'll long to do both, to give today and to share today in our lunch, that we might support a ministry that truly is doing the work of God. So this morning, would you just help me this morning to welcome Chris Russell as he comes to share on behalf of Destiny Rescue? Would you do that?
Thanks. Appreciate being here. Good morning. It is so good to be with you again. How many of you were here last year when I was here? So I was here February 25th last year. About half of you were here. So at that time, I had just transitioned. I've been a pastor for 20 years, and I had just transitioned into full-time work with Destiny Rescue and stepped into the role of Indiana Director of Advancement. So here I am, back here with you again. So you're the first church family that I get to do the second year around with, which is really exciting. And to sit down with Pastor Dave and talk about what's been going on in the life of your church family this last year and how Destiny Rescue has been something that has stirred up in the heart of this church family is super exciting for me. So if you remember from last year, Pastor Dave and I share one major thing in common, one of the more spiritual things in life. We are both diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fans. So we know how important that is. This year was not our year, but last night we both got to see the Baltimore Ravens go down, so that deserves a fist bump right there. But I'm so excited about you. And as Pastor Dave said, this is a hard topic, isn't it? This isn't a topic that any of us go like, oh yeah, I want to sit around and talk about that for hours and hours and hours. But this is such an important topic. This has to be something that matters to the church of God. This has to matter to the people who proclaim to be followers of Jesus Christ. And the Bible tells us that if we are faithful to God, if we go after those things that matter the most to the heart of God, God is going to honor that in huge ways. And we also know that when the church gets fired up and the church goes after the things that matter to the hearts of God, the Bible tells us the gates of hell itself cannot stand against that. And our organization, along with people like you, churches like you, businesses like yours, schools like yours, we are gathering together to raise up an army here in the United States that's going to say, not on our watch. This is not okay. And we're not going to stick our heads in the sand, and we're going to go after this, and we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure as many children as possible are rescued from this horrible evil. So that's why I'm here today. That's why I do what I do, and I am so thrilled to be able to be here again with you this morning. So I want to start off with a quote from our founder. Tony Kerwin started doing this work 18 years ago. And this is a simple quote that he has, but it's one that just resonates with me and over again. This is when we talk about social injustice. He says this: we only have two choices, do nothing or do something. Can you say that with me? We only have two choices, do nothing or do something. Most of you know the story of the Good Samaritan. And I'm not going to get into all the details about who was who and what role they played in society. But the simple story is that somebody was going along the road, thieves jumped them, beat the snot out of them, left them half dead on the side of the road, and tore his clothes off of them. And then we have three people that come along the road, right? And what's it say? The first one takes a look at the situation, takes a look, sees the injustice that has happened, but moves right on down the road. Why? Because that person had two choices. They could what? Do nothing or do something. Second person comes along. They see the same injustice. They see what's going on here. It's right in front of them. Some translations even say that this person went over and took a closer look at the situation, but ultimately they decided to go back to life as usual. Why? Because that person had two choices. They could what? Do nothing or do something. But then the third person comes along, and Scripture tells us that their heart was so moved by compassion, they couldn't move on down the road. When they came across this injustice, when they saw this evil, they had to do something about it. And we read on to find out about how they took that person and they tended to them and they paid for their expenses. So my question is, which of those people are you going to be today as we talk about this difficult topic? Which of those three are you going to be? We know that human trafficking is a global problem. It affects pretty much every country in the world, and we know it affects every state here in the United States, right? How many of you have read something, I would say in the last month you've read something about human trafficking, something going on here in the U.S. It's becoming much more prevalent, and we're just getting more informed about it. It's something that's been going on for years, but we're finally doing a better job of recognizing it and going after it here in the United States. So we're seeing a lot more of it in the news. But we know that it is a huge, huge problem. It's the fastest growing criminal activity in the world. Now, let this settle in. In the next 2 years, human trafficking is going to make more money than illegal drugs and firearms combined. Now, why is that? If I own a gun and I sell you a gun, I make a profit one time. But if I own a girl, I sell her over and over and over and over again. And in the next 2 years, it will be the largest money-producing criminal activity in the world. To put that in perspective, I think there's a couple numbers here I shared last year, but I know I saw we had a lot of hands that weren't up. So just to give you an idea of the kind of 30,000-foot view of trafficking, since we're talking about football last year made a profit of $8 billion. How many of you would have liked to have just a little piece of that, right? $8 billion they made last year. Baseball, basketball, hockey, and football combined last year made a profit of $30 billion. Human trafficking last year made a profit of over $150 billion. And $99 billion of that was specifically related to sex trafficking. And we know that there are over 1 million children that are being trafficked around the world right now. So as you and I, Pastor Dave, you were talking about this with the kids going down to a safe place. It's 10:39 a.m. And in a lot of the countries that we work in Southeast Asia, it's 12 hours ahead right now. So this is going to work time. Right now, as you and I sit here comfortably, worshiping God, singing songs, tens of thousands of young girls are being put to work right now. That's the contrast between this. We know that the average girl that's being used underage is 15 years old. The average girl is forced to be with somebody 11 times a night. And the average cost to be with a child worldwide is $4.35. That's the value that the world has placed on these girls. $4.35. So where do we step into this? We step into this because although this is a huge darkness, although this is a huge issue, we serve an even bigger God. And we believe that God goes before us. We believe that God goes beside us. We believe that God is anointing the work that we are doing. We believe that God is anointing the work that other organizations that are similar-minded to us are doing. And we're going to go into battle, and we're going to continue to fight until every girl has been set free. Because it's not okay. We can't sit around in our comfortable American lives and life is about us. We have too many people that are sitting around and all life is about themselves. We need to be connected to the heart of God. We need to be connected to a higher purpose in our lives. This is one of my favorite verses. And this is directions to you and to me. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and the helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. That is you and I's calling card. That's not just something I've been called to. If you are a Christ follower, that is something that you have been called to as well. So how do we do that? How does this ministry, Destiny Rescue, go about rescuing kids? And I mentioned this is a dark, dark topic. And there's a lot of kids to rescue out. Now, we're in the process right now because we believe it is so important to make sure that we are giving you accurate information, that we're still validating our rescues from the last 11 days of last year. We know accurately through December 20th. But when the final number comes out, we are anticipating that last year we rescued 1,450 individuals from sex trafficking. And every single one of those matters. They are not $4.35. Those are daughters of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and they are priceless. And we want to make sure that they know that. So we have basically, we call the 3 R's: rescue, restore, and reintegrate. Now, if you're here last year, I talked about 2 of these, and we've actually added a 3rd one this year that we're really excited about. So last year, I shared a little bit about one of the things that we do where we work at is that we will go undercover. We call those covert rescues. So we go in and we're pretending to be customers. We're sitting down, the girls are gathering around, you choose the girl that you want to sit with you. So we're playing a role. We're pretending to be customers, and then we go into information gathering mode. So we're gathering information about their age, where they're from, any contact information that we can get on them. We're going to gather that information. And our hope is that if we revisit that establishment a few times in a row, that we build a trust level with those girls, which doesn't take long, because let's look at the reality here. We know what every guy's got on their mind when they're going in there and how they're typically going to treat those girls. So we come in, and instead of being some kind of a creep, we're creating this safe space that's more like a father to a daughter than anything else. And that's going to they're going to notice that, because that's so different than how anybody else is treating them. So after a couple days, the hope is that we pay this bar fine, supposedly to take them back to our hotel. But what we're really doing is we're taking them to a nearby restaurant or safe establishment where one of our rescue workers or social workers is that can say, hey, this is who we are. This is what we can offer you. We can rescue you out of this, and this is what we can offer you for your future. So that's our covert rescues. And then we also do raids in the countries where we have what's called an MOU. It's a memorandum of understanding. That is basically just an official paperwork that says we can work with your government to do these raids. So in the countries where we have that, we'll go in and we'll have our undercover agents will have their body cameras on, and they have special apps on their phone as well, that even though it looks like their phone is off, it's doing audio and video recording. And we gather evidence, and when we feel like we have enough evidence, because now we're not just gathering evidence for underage girls, we're also gathering evidence because we are going to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law any pimps and mamasans that we come across. So we take that video evidence to their judge says, yep, we're good to go, and then we go in jointly with whatever their task force, SWAT, their equivalent of their FBI, whatever that is, we go in and do that rescue. And just to give you an example of that, last May, we had our biggest rescue in the Philippines, which is one of the countries we work in, where there was a place that they were falsely advertising for women to come, that they had these great jobs. So a lot of women were coming in from China and Taiwan and other Southeast Asian countries, and what they would do is they would take their passports away from them so they couldn't go anywhere. And then the older girls, and when I say older, I just mean over 18, were going to be pushed into labor trafficking. Those under 18 would have been pushed into sex trafficking. We went in, we gathered that evidence, we went to their judge, they gave us the green light, we went in jointly with their task force, about 30 of us total, rescued 159 females in one raid that day. 159 females' lives were forever changed. And that's because of people like you. Because it's your support that allows us to say to our rescue workers, yes, we've got the resources, book your flights, get in there, and get those girls out. Now, the third one that we've added this past year is in two of the countries we work at, there's an open border. And there's kids that are flowing across this border all the time. And what you have is this game going on where you have these men from another country that are going to this other country, to the poorest regions, and they're promising their parents that they've got great jobs for them, and they'll give them some money for that. Or they're convincing the girls that they've fallen in love with them, and they want to take them back to this other country so that they can get married. And this is where our rescue agents, we have female rescue agents in this case, on the border. We have rescue agents, female rescue agents, that work 10-hour days in 100-degree heat at 3 different stations. And they are authorized to stop any vehicle that comes across the border that has what they believe is an underage child. And then they will interview that child. Now, if that child is being trafficked, that trafficker knows better than to try to go across the border with that girl. What he's going to do is try to coach her up ahead of time and say, when you get there, these are the questions you're going to get asked. These are the answers that you need to give. And then they show up at the border, and our ladies sit down with them and start asking them questions. Who bought you the nice dress? Where are you going? And they have this series of questions that helps them break down, and then they educate the girls on, hey, if you were told this or this or this, there's a good chance this is the reality for you. And for many of those girls, their eyes are opened. And we have the authority to stop any of those girls and to contact their families. 99% of the time, their families had no idea they were at the border station. And if they had stepped 1 foot across that border into that other country, their families would have never seen them again. Because that country is one of the worst on the planet when it comes to trafficking and how they treat girls. So we've been involved with that this year, and that is going so well, and we are doing so many rescues along that border that we are actually opening 3 more border stations this year. So we're going to have 6 border stations along these 2 countries' lines. So that is the rescue work. But obviously our goal isn't just to rescue these girls. We want to make sure that they stay free. So when it comes to that, there's 2 other important steps. Restoration. We have rescue homes in a number of the countries that we do this rescue work in. So these girls can go here, and you imagine the trauma level that these girls have experienced in their life. So they need a lot of Christian counseling with that. They need people who they can talk with about that. There's obviously going to be a lot of medical needs when you have that kind of a background that you've been exposed to. So anything that they need health-wise, anything they need educational-wise, we're going to make sure that every single child gets whatever they need to be able to take the next step to their God-preferred future. So that's part of our restoration process. And then reintegration, obviously, poverty is a huge part of this. We want to make sure that they're able to support themselves and their families, because if not, there's a good chance they're either going to get pulled back into that or feel forced back into that out of lack of options. So we want to make sure that we have opportunities. Now, if you were here last year, we had jewelry, and I think I mentioned that was going away last year because we were offering so many levels of higher education and so many different things now. The girls aren't choosing to do jewelry anymore because they can make so much more money through these other avenues that we're offering them now. So that's a really good thing. So that's an important part of that. So I'm going to tell you how those 3 stages work with just one girl. So Bodum lived in a remote village. She grew up with a loving family. And at a young age, her father got very sick, and he went to the hospital, and he died. And suddenly, this family was left with huge medical bills. And at that time, it was like $2,500, which there is just a massive amount of debt. So the mother sat down with Bodum and said, you have to get a job. Like, we have to be able to make more money. Well, Bodum had heard from some people that there was great jobs in the city. So she took a 6-hour car ride to the big city. She went around and she was promised a great job at a nice restaurant. And she was bought a new dress, and she was given makeup, and they just doted on her, and they said, this is your room, you could stay here and you'll start working tomorrow. Within 2 hours of being in that room, one man after another showed up all night long. And that became Bodum's reality for the next 1.5 years of her life. When our rescue agents got to Bodum, she jumped at the chance to be able to get out of there. When they offered rescue, she was all on board. So she went to one of our rescue homes, went through some of our training. You can see a picture of her. Went through some of our training to help her to be able to support herself and her family more. She was able to get the counseling that she needed. She was able to get the emotional, physical, spiritual support that she needed to be able to deal with that severe trauma and to start moving towards her God-preferred future. I'm going to come back to a little bit of her story later on. Oops. So this is what I want to make sure that you understand today. Like, you might be sitting here today thinking, okay, that's great. You guys are doing this over there, and you got rescue agents, and they're the ones that are doing this. You are key to this. This doesn't happen without you. This doesn't happen without your church family. You guys rescued 2 children last year. 2 kids' lives are forever changed because of your heart for this ministry and this topic. 2 kids like Bodum, who were in the same darkness, experiencing the same abuse night after night after night, they are free now because of you. So please understand that your influence and your voice are absolutely critical to this battle. You have a circle of influence of people that nobody else in this room has. And you have the ability, man, social media, we can get on social media and share things, we can talk to people, we can have gatherings at our house. There are so many ways that you can use your voice and your influence. The question is, will you? And I want to give you some ideas on just how some people have done this. So this is a program that's actually for our youth. How many under 18 do we have in the room here? Got some here? Okay, scattered around here. Take a Stand is our youth initiative. This is where we have youth groups or just groups of teens that get together at schools and they decide we're going to do something to rescue a child. And we've had literally schools that do literal take a stands during the day. Black Hawk Christian Academy in Fort Wayne has done that for 5 years now. Their high school seniors, over 5 years, have raised over $60,000 to rescue girls. We have youth groups right here in Goshen that are doing a simple thing where we do have girls that are just friendship bracelets. Remember the old friendship bracelets? We still have girls that are making those, and we have youth groups that get these. They get a bundle of 300 friendship bracelets. They sell them to their friends and other adults for $5 each. You sell the bundle, you just rescued a child. Okay? It's not supposed to be complicated. It's really about taking something that you already love to do and using your, again, circle of influence and use your voice and rescue a child. Now, I've got a video here that I want to show you. I've got 2 videos that I brought today with you for you to be able to see. And this first one, we're not even talking about the teens now. Now I want to show you what 2 7-year-old best friends decided to do about rescuing a kid. Let's take a look at that one.
My name's Kelsey. My name's Addie. It was really like a whole school thing for us to just get money for the kids that need it. I got inspired by Kelsey. I did a lemonade stand because I really like lemonade, and it was like a really good time to do it. I probably do it about once a year. I decided to do a stand with candy and bracelets, mostly every weekend. $470.04. 1,531. I wanted people to feel like we have been feeling, like they have safe places to live and be safe.
This is how we rescue. What could you do?
The 2 of them combined, 2 7-year-olds, raised $2,000 to go towards rescuing children. They took something that they love to do, lemonade stands and making candy. And that's what got it all started. And they've raised $2,000. Rescue partner, this is our key. The rescue partner and rescue our child, those are our 2 primary ways of giving. The rescue a child is the $1,500 that we've talked about. We'll rescue a child. That gets our agents flown into where we believe there's underage kids. It covers their expenses, and most of the time it means moving the girls to a new place because they're property of somebody, and if you take them away, somebody's going to come looking for them. So on average, it's about $1,500, and that's the challenge that Pastor Dave's given for you guys to be able to rescue 2 kids. The other way we do that is through rescue partners, and that is just signing up for whatever you feel God stirs in your heart to do on a monthly basis. We have people who do $1 a month. We have people who do $1,500 a month. It's whatever God puts on your heart, and we have those forms at the table in the back that you can check out. Team trips. We have 14 team trips this year that are going to Cambodia and Thailand, which is where 2 of our countries that we do the most rescue work. You go on a team trip, you're going to do a walkthrough of a red light district, and you're going to see the reality of what life looks like for these girls. You're also going to get to go to rescue home and see girls who have been recently rescued and see how we're working with them through counseling and through the reintegration program to get them ready for the future that God has for them. You're going to get to go to villages, and you're going to get to see girls who were rescued years ago who are now married and have children of their own and are absolutely thriving. That's an amazing opportunity. If you're interested in that, you can go to the destinyrescue.org is our website and find out more about that. Blackout games. We have college teams and high school teams in this area. I've got one coming up at Grace College. The men's basketball, women's basketball, and the women's softball team this year are taking a game, and they're dedicating the sales of that and take time to make awareness for their fans that are coming to those games. They're just taking what they already do. They're taking what they love to do and what they're good at, and they're just leveraging it to rescue a kid. Any of you like to walk or run a lot? It's January, folks. At least some of you had to make that a resolution, right? I mean, we're like 2 weeks in. Have we given up already? Oh, Pastor Dave, we're going to have to do a message on endurance here pretty soon here. We're going to need a passage on there. So people who like to walk and run, we had 13 churches last year. They just jumped into the Fort for Fitness run. It's a half marathon. And they created their own fundraiser pages, and they got the word out to their family and friends. And those 13, 14 church groups that were part of that last year raised over $40,000 to go towards rescuing kids. And all it was participating in something they love to do anyway. They like to walk, they like to run. Do you see where I'm getting at with this? This is not reinventing the wheel. What do you already love to do? What do you have expertise and experience in? And how can you leverage that, bring people around to join you in that and say, you know what, in 2020, we're going to do something to rescue a kid. It could be a group of you at business. It could be a group of you here at the church, men's ministry, women's ministry. It could be your neighborhood, your group of best friends, whatever that is. Who can you have a conversation with after today and sit down and go, what are we going to do? What can we do in 2020 to rescue a child? I have one more video for you that we're going to share, and it's a woman who did exactly that, how she learned to take her love and passion for running and turned it into something that God could use to rescue kids. Check it out.
My name is Julie Berry, and I'm from West Chicago. I had no interest in running marathons initially. I used to work with people that ran marathons, but back in 2013, a friend of mine approached me because a group of people were raising money to get kids out of sex trafficking, and they were doing it through fundraising for a marathon. So she invited me to join that group, and that's when I started raising money to help rescue kids from sex trafficking. This particular cause is very close to my heart. When I was 3 years old, I actually was sexually abused by a man. And so I know the effects of that. And for me, it was a way of bringing good from my past and bringing justice when I didn't have justice. In the first year, I was a little disappointed with my fundraising efforts. I actually was in tears a couple times. I thought, doesn't anybody care? But that year, like 3 children were able to be rescued through my efforts. If I just rescue 1, if I just rescue 2, then it's worth the effort. And so that's what I've been doing each year, and each year God has just like totally blessed that. 2015, that year I had injured my ankle, and it was keeping me from training on the trails. In that year, I ended up getting pregnant and losing my baby. It was like, I think the Tuesday before the weekend of the marathon, and I'm in tears, and I'm like, what am I gonna do, Lord? The Thursday before the marathon, there was just about like $7,000 in the donation page fund, and then by the following Monday, it was like up to $18,000. So like God brought in like a huge amount of money in a matter of days. I feel like I have been so blessed by doing this. I was a different person back then. I was a woman that still had a lot of wounds inside from the past and didn't feel like I had a lot of control over the world. I thought, you know, I'm just gonna do this. I would get on the trails and I would listen to worship music, and I would just have conversations with the Lord for hours. Over time, I just saw how God was like healing me in this process. And then I would see what he would do to bring in the funds for the children. He's grown my faith. He's shown me that he does back us up and that he can do anything. I feel like people are missing out by not doing something like this. But I know there are so many people out there that have been abused sexually, and this is a way for those people to bring a voice to their past and say, I'm bringing justice. This is how I rescue. What can you do?
Let me share two final stories with you in our time together this morning. Let's go back to Bodum, who I was telling you about earlier. Bodum was a girl that after she went through our rescue program, we wanted to reunite her with her mom. It was a safe situation to reunite her with her mom. And we sat down with her mom and we wanted to get at the heart of the poverty issue to help out, because we found out obviously she had this debt from her husband passing. She sold mangoes and she made $35 a month selling mangoes, which obviously was not enough even in that culture. That 35 is a decent amount of money for some things. It wasn't going to support her family. So we sat down with her and we found out she was a great cook, but she had no way of getting her goods around to the rest of the village. So we gave her a microloan. She was able to get a food cart, and within 3 months she was making 6 times what she had been making before. And now she was able to safely take care of herself, take care of her daughter, and be able to pay off the big debt that she had. We are fighting for the freedom of these girls. We got our 3-year study back on how these girls are doing long term. 84% of them have stayed free and clear from sexual exploitation. And we're not seeing that number anywhere else. We want to see that number among other organizations, but we're not seeing a number anywhere near that anywhere else at the present moment. But 84% have been able to stay free and clear of getting pulled back into that lifestyle. The last story I want to share with you is actually, I think it might have been one I shared last year, but it's my favorite one, so if it's okay. A year later, some of you forgot. A few years ago at Christmas time, a young girl named Mew, who was very quiet, was sitting around with some of the girls. And it was a typical Christmas party where they were sitting around and they were sharing stories and having fun reminiscing about goofy things that they have done together. And then at some point during the conversation, it got more serious. And the girls started sharing about what they had been through and what they had been rescued out of. And Mew, who was always such a quiet girl, at one point she stood up and she looked at our rescue workers, she looked at our caseworkers, our counselors, and she simply said this: "Thank you for considering my life worthy enough to come and rescue." And I believe that that is the same thing that the 2 girls that you guys rescued last year would say to you. Thank you for considering their lives worthy enough to send rescue. But the hand-in-hand challenge with that is, how many more girls are you going to rescue this year? How many more girls are going to get to stand up at these get-togethers in our homes and be able to say, because of New Paris Missionary Church, I was set free, and my life has been forever changed. That is the amazing opportunity that you have. Going back to the story at the beginning, 3 people, they saw the same injustice. One of them was moved by compassion and had to do something about that. If you are that person today, I strongly encourage you, talk to Pastor Dave, talk to Pastor Matt, whoever else that you know on staff or you trust that can help you take the next step towards what might that look like. Guys, I live down the road in Goshen. I'm like almost by the middle school in Goshen. I'm really close. If you want to do something with your business, with your school, get creative with something, grab one of my business cards and get a hold of me. I would love to be able to get together, share more stories with you, and help you brainstorm ways that you can use your power, your influence, your joy, your experience to set kids free. Thanks for having me here today.